Hey there, folks. Just wanted to welcome you to part two of our episode with Stuart Angel. Just wanted to welcome you back in here and let you know we're going to pick up right back where we dropped off. Real quick, if you want to become a subscriber, go to patreon.com/getontap for only $3 a month. You get all these shows early. You get them in full, like this one. And subscriber-only content. We're going to start ramping back up here in the very near future. So we appreciate everybody. And without further ado, here's part two. Anybody that steps into that White House, if they're not already in the cabal, they probably get sat down and say, whatever ideas or plans you might have had in your campaign trail or anything you said, we're going to go ahead and squash it.
It's like the old Bill Hicks joke where he says, a president gets elected and he's got every intention of, doing the right thing. And he said, but on the first day, all the guys in the black suits march in. They take him down to the basement of the White House. They sit him down at this big table, guys smoking cigars. It's dark. You can't see anybody's face. And up on the screen comes a different camera angle and shows the person who actually shot Kennedy right in the head. And they turn to him and say, do you want that to be you? That was a Bill Hicks joke back in the day. But
nowadays they don't have to do that. Nowadays they assassinate your character.
Yeah,
nowadays,
they don't actually have to kill you.
Yeah, and
my issue with Trump is that his main tagline and slogan that everybody rallied around in 2016 was "Lock her up," right? Lock her up, lock her up. It was everywhere. It was on T-shirts. It was a rallying cry. Lock this criminal up, right?
What happened?
And then what happened? Right after he was elected, somebody at some press conference or some event, before he'd even been sworn in, said something about, well, are you actually going to go after the Clintons? And he said, no, Hillary and Bill, they're great people. And it was just like, are you effing kidding me right now? We know that this woman is the highest of criminals, the most treasonous of criminals, who was cheering as they sodomized Gaddafi on a roadside, who was actually turning his country around.
Yeah, for the positive, actually.
Yeah.
People don't know that.
People don't understand that he kind of turned a corner from his earlier years.
And now you know what's happening in Libya.
Yeah, it's an open-air slave market.
Yeah, for everybody that, wants to...
That's my issue with Trump, is that he tends to talk out of both sides of his mouth. And so it's a question of...
Same old.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Same old.
Is he really any different, even though we like some of the stuff he did? Well,
I think at the end of the day, the one thing he did do, whether it was by default or by accident, is he did encourage other people to punch back. People that normally wouldn't punch back. People like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of having people who have the mindset of the minority. And I'm talking about train of thought. I'm not talking about skin color. Just trying to dictate how I live, and I don't want to be bothered. And that person finally stood up and said, "Enough's enough." So it's kind of one of those things where, if you're a controlled opposition, do you let those do you allow those seeds of rebellion be planted? Because it's ultimately going to end up destroying your system.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's a hell of a game to actually, do a Monday evening quarterback session on. I mean, it's a nightmare because it's such a vicious circle. I think we should go into some of the older conspiracy theories, right?
I think that if you're going to go with the older ones, you probably have to go into the biggest one, which we've already mentioned, but going a little bit deeper on it's 9/11. I mean, I think that's the conspiracy to end all conspiracies. And the reason I say that is because it's the first major big one during the internet age. You know what I mean? And it was before social media. So all the information you got, the loose change and all this stuff, it was all raw. It was never censored or anything like that. And I guess the 4 or 5 big questions you have to ask yourself about 9/11 would be number one, the whole NORAD thing, how that same very day they were doing uh, NORAD is like North American radar, whatever it is.
Yeah, NORAD's what controls all of the skies, basically, especially for the military.
And they were
And they
doing,
were doing, I think it's an ungodly number. It's like something like 35 or 37 different military exercises were going on there. And so there was mass confusion between the FAA and NORAD and everybody as far as, wait, what's happening here? Isn't this just a drill? Is this what's going on here? But that's a theme in every one of these events, like the London 7/7 bombing.
Right.
They were doing a drill of a tube bombing that exact morning, and
because you can hear radio communication on 9/11 that they've released.
Yep.
When they were radioing to air pilots, and the pilot said, "Wait, this is not a drill. This is real," because they were in the middle of doing those drills, and okay, and when you start with 9/11, first with the NORAD thing, like everybody saw the towers fail. So I guess we can argue all day long about, whether those planes had the ability to bring down towers like that. But I mean, that's one right there that people will keep you back and forth on. But the real questions you should be asking is, well, why did Tower 7 collapse when nothing ever hit it? You should also be asking yourself, why there is no wreckage in Pennsylvania. It's just a giant hole, because that's the first plane wreckage I've ever seen in a photo where there were no luggage, there was no clothing, there was no plane parts, there was nothing but a giant hole. Then you have to ask yourself about the Pentagon. Well, why was it the section of the Pentagon that was doing the auditing of the $2 trillion or whatever that Rumsfeld had just announced the day before that had gone missing? But there was also the part that was being renovated, so nobody else important was over there. But where's the footage? Where's the footage? Okay, there's like 3 still frames that have been released. 1 frame, 2 frames, 3 frames. But it's right there on ground level. Like, there's 1,000 cameras at the Pentagon. Show that plane flying in and hitting the Pentagon. That's all I want to see. Show it.
A new video actually came out less than a week ago.
Really?
On this, yeah. And, I mean, I know we're in the age of deep fakes now and all this stuff, but if you look at the video and you're looking at the clothes that the people are wearing and you're looking at the cars that are there, it's period specific. So the clothes are correct, the cars are correct, and it's a guy, and it's got a little FBI stamp on the bottom of the video.
Oh,
and it's a guy walking around with a handheld camera, and I think the video is about 1.5 minutes long, and there's nothing. There's no plane parts. It's clearly either a bomb or a missile hit that building. I mean, it's plain as day. And with the Pennsylvania thing, you've got Leon Panetta, who was the transportation secretary, testified before Congress. You can go watch this testimony. It was on C-SPAN, that he was the guy who was updating Dick Cheney in the bunker underneath the White House. And he kept telling Cheney, the plane is this far away, and Cheney wouldn't say anything, and he went back and forth several times, and then Cheney gave the order to shoot the plane down, and so they blew Flight 93 out of the sky over Pennsylvania. That's what happened. That's why you didn't see any parts or anything. It's because the thing got just obliterated. So
yeah, but still, I mean, massive elements of that plane should be somewhere.
Well, it was scattered way about. So they made this. My guess is they then shot a second missile into the ground and said that this is the crash site, and then they make up this whole story about, what was the slogan of, the guys who supposedly
let's roll.
Yeah, let's roll. The we fight, Americans fight back, and that's to gear everybody up to go to war with the Middle East for the next 20 years and to rile everybody up.
Plus years.
And I mean, look at before 9/11, they were already seeding the media with Osama bin Laden stuff, and about starting 2 years before. So in 1999, they started talking about this bin Laden guy, and well, guess what? The bin Laden family and the Bush family have been in business together for 50, 60 years. I mean,
bin Laden was a CIA asset in the 80s for the Mujahideen when we were funding the Mujahideen in Afghanistan to fight the Russians.
His name was Tim Osmond.
Yeah.
That was his code name. And yeah, he was the money man. He was the guy that would go and make sure the funds got to where they needed to be over there. Now, the day before 9/11, at the Carlyle Group at New York City, you had Poppy Bush Bush Sr. Uh, at a televised meeting with a member of the Bin Laden family. Now, on 9/11, there were only a handful of flights that were allowed to take off and leave after the event happened. And one of those flights was allowing the Bin Laden family to fly out of the country.
Yep.
So, that,
Whoa.
yeah. I mean, it was clearly elements of the CIA, Mossad, and several other MI6 intelligence agencies that were involved in pulling that event off that day. And the buildings were clearly wired up. There's testimony, same as Oklahoma City, with the testimony that people in the elevator shafts doing weird things, weird wires, weird vans showing up at odd times. Then you had the whole weird, with 9/11, you had the whole weird like Israeli art group thing that was going on the 89th floor of I forget which tower, but it was one of the towers. And yeah, this art installation. And
there are a lot of people that got called in that day and said, don't get on those flights. Like
Seth MacFarlane,
Mark Wahlberg, both.
Yeah.
And think about how many movies they've done in the meantime. Ted.
That's
Ted
right.
too. I mean, there were other people who were said not to come into work that day that worked in the towers and stuff. Because you think about it, I mean, the towers were fairly empty that day by normal standards.
Well, that's once you dig deeper into 9/11, you start finding out that those towers were mostly empty beforehand anyways. So after the 93 bombing by Sheikh Mohammed, which was an FBI plot, the FBI built the bomb. So, I mean, Tower 1 was at, I believe it was like 22% occupancy, and Tower 2 was at 13%. There were whole floors on that building that if you look through pictures throughout the years that were never even finished.
And full of asbestos as well.
Yeah, full of asbestos. They needed to come down one way or another.
And by the way, Larry Silverstein took out like a $2.5 billion insurance policy on them.
Trillion.
Just a few months before. So next thing you know, all this thing happens and they can build them a new building. I'm sure fully occupied this day, I would assume. Well, maybe not after this. But yeah, I mean, you got to question yourselves. And I guess one of the big questions would be, okay, the people for the Pentagon flight, if it was just a missile that hit it, what happened to those people? And I got to say, I don't know, and I think whatever happened to them probably evilish, but if you think the government's not capable of doing horrible things, just look at Waco. Who knows what happened with them?
I think a lot of those people never existed. I think they were fake. If you look, so here's a fun fact about 9/11. Supposedly 2,900 and some odd people died that day. Well, we have this thing here called the Social Security Death Index, which registers you within days of you passing away to get you off the Social Security rolls. I mean, this is an accurate account of people coming and going.
These are the hard
earth.
Facts, by the way, that we need to be listening to. So these hard facts are great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, only about 400 names got entered of the supposed 2,900 victims got entered on the Social Security Death Index.
Most of them, firefighters probably?
Yeah. It was, mostly those types of people and a few, others. But yeah, so about 2,500 of the 2,900 that died were never entered on the Social Security Death Index.
And if you listen, like from the plane, remember they were making phone calls from the plane and they released that?
Yeah.
And somebody had called and said, "Hey, Mom, this is, Jeremy, your son." Like, who would ever call I would never call my mom and say, "Hey, Mom, it's your son, Billy." You know what I mean? She knows it's me. It was just a very weird phone call. And a lot of these things.
All of those phone calls were completely weird and, in my opinion, completely staged based on everything that I've looked into with it. I mean, it's just fact after, like, for example, one of the engines that was found on the street in New York City from the supposed planes that hit these buildings didn't belong to the planes that supposedly hit the buildings. It was an engine from a much smaller airplane. And there are eyewitnesses that saw a white van drive up and dump this thing out on the street and then drive off.
Well, you had immediately after 9/11, you had multiple interviews, because everybody wants to get down there and get the scoop, and not everybody's in on it. And you have multiple firefighters saying, I was down there on this floor. I heard multiple explosions coming from below us. The buildings were rumbling. There were things going on. You had all these different kind of situations, and
how about the magic passports?
I was getting ready to say that too. The passport that flew out of his
Muhammad Atta's passport somehow just gracefully drifted to the ground in that ball of fire and was in perfect condition for them to find and say he's the guy that did this. Meanwhile,
how many of the 19 hijackers are still alive?
I'm pretty much all. Some of them may be dead now, but all of them have been seen and talked to since that day over in the Middle East. So. I'm to the point with 9/11 where I'm not even sure, and I would lean more towards the fact that planes didn't even hit those buildings. That was all a TV generated movie event,
a green screen event
for us to watch. Yeah,
holograms.
Well, like if you pull up the footage and watch the plane hitting the second tower, the plane goes all the way through the building and the nose comes out the other side, and then it comes back and disappears.
And where's the rest of the plane parts are flying off in either direction when the plane does hit the building?
Plane is
the plane was probably wider than the building was, but none of the parts.
A plane is a tin can. If it hits a bird, it may crash and everyone on it may die. Yet these planes cut through a building that had steel columns on the outside like a hot knife through butter. Give me a break. I mean, simple science tells you that isn't possible.
Games afoot.
Yeah.
Well, since we're talking about deaths that may not have ever happened, because 9/11, you can go into that forever and ever and ever.
It's a never-ending rabbit hole.
It really is. It really is. And there's some fascinating stuff out there. And whatever you want to believe at the end of the day, I encourage you to go back and Google General Wesley Clark, who lays this all out, and will sit there and tell you. And this guy was high up, and he said they came to me and they had a level. They had plans all laid out. They had 7 different countries they were planning on taking over. And this was Iraq, Afghanistan, I think, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, and maybe Iran or something. There were like 7 countries that and since he mentioned that in 2011, I think we've hit 6 or all 7 of them or something like that.
Sudan.
Yeah. But when you want to go back and this is a crazy one right here, and I'm really interested in seeing how much Stu knows on this one because I've dipped into it just a little bit. But the Challenger.
Oddly enough, I just listened to something on this the other day.
Do you know what we're talking about, Simon?
Oh, I do. I saw that live streamed allegedly.
Yeah, I watched that as a kid. I was in first grade in elementary school, and it was the first, from what I can gather, just from researching and hearing things about it, it was the first time, aside from maybe the moon landing, that they had, I think, basically every school in the country tuned in to watch this space shuttle.
We're getting to the moon landing next, by the way.
Supposedly go to space, and because it had a teacher on it. So there was an elementary school teacher who was one of the astronauts for this, and she was going to do whatever dumb little experiments they were going to have her do up there, and. Yeah, sure enough, the thing takes off, and 7, 8, 10 seconds later, it's just a huge fireball in the sky.
2 rockets going sideways, 2 of the booster rockets going left and right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
supposedly
I
a faulty O-ring was the cause of all of this, destruction. But if you start to dig into it a little deeper, and now, you got to understand, I come from the position that almost everything NASA has ever done is fake. So I believe it's a fake agency that absorbs, $28 million a day in budget. But supposedly...
I was trained at the NASA Zero Gravity pool in Houston.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
That's the one where
the international space station is mocked up at 40 feet below
that's where
below
they
water.
Film everything down there.
I've been there with those astronauts training.
That's just a little aside on that. That's where I believe
Chris, by the way, would be losing his mind about now.
that's where it was back in 2012 or 2014. One of these astronauts was supposedly going to the space station, and his wife kisses him goodbye. I'll see you, in a few months, honey. Whatever. Well, she got a call 2 weeks later. We're rushing your husband to the hospital because he drowned.
He got an embolism or something stupid in that pool.
Yeah, the spacesuit started filling up with water.
Yeah,
because he was in that pool. He wasn't on the space station.
I've been in that very pool with that very space station. Yeah.
So what's it like in there? I mean, is it?
It was pretty cool. I had to go through some security clearances as a non-US citizen, and that was cleared. And I was told at the time, under no circumstances, whilst I was doing an element of offshore training that I was doing, which is a simulated helicopter crash, rollover. And then you've got to get out of a submerged helicopter. So I was in the process of doing this, and they said, under no circumstances are any of you hooligans allowed to go and swim over the space station or what have you. So I'm in my bloody Gumby suit, getting tossed upside down, crashed in the water, thrown upside down, kick out the doors, bail out, get to the side, and someone carelessly left a pair of fins and a mask. Well, I saw that as an opportunity.
They want me to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it just had my name all over it. So I quickly grabbed the fins, threw the mask on. I'm a scuba instructor for many, many years. So I dove down, and the so-called astronauts were in training, and I'm kicking around with them, just doing some free diving. And every time I popped up for air, all I could hear was "Mr. Winch, come to the side of the pool. Mr. Winch, come to the." And I knew I was in for a bollocking. And I just kept diving down, just pop up, grab a quick lungful, back down I went, and messing around. And I eventually came up, and I went to the edge of the pool. And I thought, well, I did what I needed to do, just have some fun. And they said, I got such a bollocking for it. We should be ejecting you from these premises. They are no, so you were told specifically not to. And I looked up at the guy who was shouting and yelling and screaming at me. I said, well, you clowns shouldn't be leaving fins and a mask on the side of the pool, knowing, that the temptation is far too great. And they went, well, yeah, fair enough, you hooligans. And I went about my way. But nonetheless, I disrupted, the astronauts that were being trained on the International Space Station at the Zero Lab facility, which I thought was hysterical.
Well, to get back to the Challenger, all of the supposed astronauts on that flight either have the best doppelgangers you have ever seen and heard of in your life, that also, by the way, have the exact same name
and professions
that these astronauts had, or they weren't actually on that space shuttle.
I did this one night. I looked up one of the people because there's a meme out there you can find, and it's got all of their pictures from the 80s and their picture from today side by side, and almost every one of them, it's almost an exact match.
Yeah.
So I started looking back some of the names and back tracing them and stuff, and I found, yes, this woman is a professor at this college, and this is how it goes. This person, these are all people that were allegedly on board of the Challenger that day.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Look, everything's a lie.
Because NASA is
we're going into onto ground now that is incredibly dangerous, because when you lose faith and trust in the institutions that we've all been up with,
that's the thing.
Now we've got an issue, because with that exposure and that lack of faith in trust, and integrity and all those wonderful words, you come down to that realization. There's a no shit moment going to happen.
Think about how much money NASA gets, taxpayer funded. How much money? Like NASA is a brand, just like Coca-Cola is, just like Nike is. NASA was a brand in the 60s, and that brand was what brought down, eventually, communism. We beat the Russians to the moon. I mean, it was a big branding moment. But if you go back and look, if you think about it, you know who Werner von Braun is?
Yes, I do. V2 specialist from the V2 rocket program in Germany. Yeah.
Yeah, and what happened with him is during Operation Paperclip, the United States brought him back along with other Nazi scientists, and Werner von Braun was the father of NASA. He was the father of the rocket program, essentially. And he also said on occasions that it would take a rocket the size of the Empire State Building to be able to get to the moon if it existed. And of course, I don't know if he ever saw that to fruition or anything, and he passed on. Do you know what's on his gravesite?
That's what I was going to say.
Go on. You've told me this in the past, and I can't recall. But come on, man, do it. You know you want to.
The only thing on his gravesite, all it says is Psalms 19:1. Do you know what Psalms 19:1?
You can tell me.
The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Do you know what the firmament is? So that's a whole different.
So if you start,
that one's one that really gonna.
So I've been down the flat Earth rabbit hole, and I'm definitely not a ball earther. I'm not going to proclaim that I am definitely a flat earther, but I definitely don't believe the nonsense that we're spinning at thousands of miles an hour chasing this and chasing that, because I don't experience any of that in my life. I don't feel it. And I do believe that everything is we're the center and it's rotating around us. And that's what that is alluding to. So this is the guy that supposedly was in charge of it all. And he's saying that we live inside a dome that we can't get through.
That's the crumb he left on his. Why would somebody so enthralled in science leave a Bible verse on his? You know what I mean?
And he also told his nurse that I forget exactly what he said, but he said that basically three things will happen. And he was like, basically one of them was basically 9/11 and then all these wars, and then that there would be a fake alien invasion to try to control the population. So that's, coming from the top guy. And the interesting thing is, and you can go online and watch these videos. You can see them on YouTube, see them on Rumble, anywhere. Just type in these guys that go out and get these rockets and they shoot them up. Well, they go 73 miles in the air, and they're going lickety-split. I mean, as fast as it could go. And then all of a sudden, it hits something, and it just stops.
Now, have you ever, if anybody think about any rocket launch you've ever seen from NASA, whenever you see the rocket launch, what trajectory do you always see those rockets going? Do you ever see them going straight up?
No.
There's always a curve.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're not being shot up. They're being shot out, probably into the ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, where they eventually... Because why... Yeah. Why, if you're in a rocket, your objective is not to glide into space, it's to shoot into space. You're supposed to go straight up with all the power you can, but every time you see the trajectory, the rocket's always making a curve.
Yeah.
It's always curving. Why? Where are you going? And look, I'm like Stu, like I'm not, I don't know what the Earth is. I don't know if it's flat. I don't know if it's on a disc. I don't know what the case may be, but if you put a gun to my head, I'm going to say we're not on a ball spinning 1,000 miles an hour, hurling through infinity at 55,000 miles an hour. Because think about this. This is what they tell you. This is what they tell us. And this is their science, is we're on a ball spinning 1,000 miles an hour. All right, put a bunch of, Lego blocks or something on a basketball and spin it around just a little bit and see, okay, but we're also rotating around the sun at like 10,000 miles an hour. And then our universe is hurling through the galaxy at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. So if we're doing all these things and all these things are going on once at one time, then how is it that Orion's belt is still perfectly aligned with the pyramids in Egypt over 3,000 years? Because I could see that being aligned once every 100 years or 200 years, kind of like Halley's Comet or something every 75 years. But if you're hurling around and then spinning and then shooting, how is it that those three stars still align over top of those three pyramids for the last 600 years? How does that happen?
Yeah.
If what they're saying is true, how does that happen?
Yeah.
And the flat Earth and the globe and all that kind of stuff. You can dive into Antarctica. What's on the other side of Antarctica?
Yeah.
Because that's the only place in this world that all
countries
nations have an agreement on that nobody can go there. I mean, you can take a little cruise
Well,
ship
they'll
out
let-
there,
they'll
and they'll
let
let you on the shore of the,
Yeah.
right there on the edge or something like that. But don't you dare try and go and explore in the middle of it. You know, what's on the outside. These are questions we should be asking. Why don't we know what's on Antarctica with all the technology we have
My
today?
guess is they call aliens
Beautiful, lush.
extraterrestrials. Well, what does that actually mean? Terrestrial means land, terra, and extra means more. Okay, my guess is that we are surrounded in an ice wall, and that's what keeps the oceans in, and that on the other side of that ice wall is extra land.
Or more water that eventually leads
More
to more
water
lush,
and more
beautiful
land.
green land.
Now you had
the purple smoke is escaping right now.
so you had Operation damn, what was the name? But it was Robert Byrd, Admiral Robert Byrd.
I've got his book in here somewhere.
Do you? Okay.
I've got a book in here. It's called Beyond the Poles or something like that. Yeah.
So he was like the foremost Arctic explorer, north and south.
World Beyond the Poles. It's Amedeo Gianniani. So, but
Robert Byrd, I believe it was called Operation. No, not Operation Fishbowl. That's when they were shooting the nukes up at the dome and trying to actually break the firmament to get out. But he took an expedition down to Antarctica, and it was crazy because he took like six warships. Basically, it was a whole fleet, hundreds of men, military trained. And he encountered all sorts of strange things once he got down there. There were craft that were flying up out of the ocean, and actually he got into a battle. This was supposed to be a 6 or 9 month expedition, and they hightailed it back within 3 weeks. Damn. And he's quoted in I believe it's a Peruvian paper, newspaper, as and he actually let the cat out of the bag a little bit and talked about some of the things that he encountered there. And that's how this information got out. But basically the long and the short of it is that he kind of proved that there's way more to Antarctica and way more going on in this world.
Operation High Jump.
Operation High Jump. There it is. Than what we've been told. And he also talks about the fact that while they were down there on a different time, that they were taking these flight expeditions over the ice, and it was large. It was a larger landmass than North America. So if you think about how big North America is, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, I mean, that's huge. And this sheet of ice down there was larger. Now there are green areas. I believe there's underground bases there. And in fact, with modern technology and GPS stuff, some smart guy figured out that they could hack into the Fitbit system. These tracker watches.
Yeah.
And they were actually able to map out a few of the underground bases by finding the tracker signal for these Fitbits and watching how these people were walking around underneath the ice in Antarctica.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, no. More purple smoke. More purple smoke. Oh, help me.
Yeah, they were able to figure out, well, hey, here's one of the underground bases because this Fitbit just keeps going here's this hallway, and he goes this way, and he walks around here, and yeah.
Oh, give me strength.
But my guess is that there are extra lands outside the ice.
Well, I've seen like a couple of illustrations of what it possibly may look like, and it's pretty interesting. Just as hypotheticals, just undo mind exercises with. But the one I saw was pretty interesting. Is of course Antarctica is an ice ring, and everything you see from our standard flat Earth maps is. And if you want to see the standard flat Earth map, look no further than the UN symbol.
Yeah.
All that stuff is out there. It's right there in front of your face. But you got the ice ring, and then around it is of course other land masses and whatnot in water, and there's possibly another ring around that as well. That's what I mean. It goes on,
yeah.
And we're just the center.
Yeah,
we're not the center of the universe. We're just the center of whatever.
Right now, we're
is.
the kind of inner ring that has life on it, and one of the theories is that the Earth is kind of always growing and producing more. Okay. That's why, like, this whole myth about oil being a finite resource is ridiculous, that water's a finite resource is ridiculous.
Yeah, but dried up old rigs and old wells right now are replenished and they're going
That
right back in there
that hap-
because it.
that happened to my grandfather. He owns a farm in southern Indiana. He's 97, still doing it. And his oil well went dry in the late 80s, early 90s, and then around 2000 it was pumping again harder than it had pumped to begin with. So these all myths and lies, but that the earth is constantly growing, and and as it gets, starts growing and getting bigger, then it forms like these rings around it, like a tree almost would. And then those are like contained kind of areas. So what we think of as our world is in one contained area, but then outside the Antarctic ice wall is another contained area. And there's also theories that then there's separate suns and moons and stuff for each one.
Yeah, because when you talk about the sun and stuff, and if you see all these pictures, it's mind boggling. So you see the sun in these graphics, and it is, millions of times bigger than the Earth. You see these photos, and the sun's right here, and the Earth is right here. But when you look at it in the sky, it's just this little ball that's the size of the moon. And if it was really the size as they proclaim, as far as it was, it would fill our entire sky.
Yeah, my guess is the sun is about the same size as the moon, and they're both
In our atmosphere.
way closer than than what they say they are, and that the moon isn't just this dense, dusty rock; that it is actually a light source also. Because you could you could do this test yourself on a moonlit night, stand out in the moonlight, and then go stand in the shade, and it is significantly cooler in the shade than it is in the moonlight.
Simon sailed the seven seas. He'd be a good one to talk. I mean,
I would spend hours up on the heli deck, just because there is no light pollution.
Yeah.
Right, especially when we're underway, where it's just navigation lights, and everything is shut down, so the decks of these vessels aren't lit up. The light show is and we think we got it good in Appalachia and up in the foothills here. The light show on the ocean is off the chart.
I bet.
I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, for what I was at, it's just, and you kind of take it back to NASA and talking about things, you kind of jump back into the moon landing and things like this, and it was a big rah-rah moment, and people want to argue with me left and right, but I'm not very scientific. I'm not a scientific person. I'm really not. I'm not very intelligent. I know people. I can read rooms. I can talk to people. I think that's my biggest benefit.
Are you admitting to being a slackjaw?
Pretty much.
Outstanding.
But you can read people and you can read situations and stuff. And I also just use something as simple as common sense. And if you're sitting there telling me, as I look at this piece of equipment that you told me, managed to make it, 200,000 miles there and back, that's no thicker than a piece of aluminum foil through some of the just vacuums of space. They'll just suck your lungs right out of your body. And you're telling me that you made it through the Van Allen belt, which other people in your same industry in NASA will say we can't make it through the Van Allen radiation belt because it'll kill people, but you managed to make it there twice, and then you landed this piece of shit on the moon, and then you took back off and magically on the first time met back up with this person. You also had somebody taking photos of the thing taken off from the moon that you managed to get back, and you also made a phone call on a landline back to Nixon. I mean, all these things just make absolutely zero sense to me. I can't even get freaking service in Endicott right now. You're going to tell me Nixon got a phone call from Neil Armstrong on the moon. You're going to tell me that that they had Bluetooth or whatever cameras set up on the moon so somebody could take those photos of the lunar module going back. Who was there taking those photos?
That's a very good point. Yes.
Like, and you can watch like videos of Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong being interviewed and how their faces change when confronted with some of these things and how their emotions change when confronted with some of these things. Some of them will say, oh yeah, you're out there on the moon and the stars are the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And other ones say you can't see the stars at all. I mean, their stories contradict each other.
I mean, how many of the moon shots that we've had from the moon depicting the Earth in its beautiful glory?
So much small.
And it's minuscule, and there are no stars.
Yeah, and the Earth is the size of the moon from the pictures of the moon, but I mean, that doesn't make sense. Like, the moon is what it is from our point of view. But if you're on the moon looking at the Earth should take up the entire sky. Once again, not just be a tiny little speck off in the distance. You're not that far away. You're the same distance from us on the moon as we are from the moon. We can see the moon like this. Why does
I'm sure someone should have done a perspective shot on that with the curvature of the moon that they depicted, and the Earth in the long distance. And it's
if you look into NASA, they readily admit that every image they release is CGI.
That is a fact as well.
There you go. And take a trip to the Space Museum and go look at that hunk of junk that they supposedly drove around the moon or that landed on the moon, and it's a joke.
It's a trash can.
I'm not trying to offend anybody that believes in it, but it's once you actually start to look at it and don't just believe the lie, and you start to dissect even just the top little pieces of this story, it falls apart completely.
And why haven't we went back?
Well, that's it, and we lost all the telemetry data.
And it would be too difficult to find. These are quotes.
This is with 1969 computers compared to today, when we walk around with more power in our cell phones than
was
NASA's computers in 1969
combined.
And yet, we can't get through the Van Allen radiation belt. We don't have the telemetry data. We don't have this. We don't have that. Oh, we can't do this. We can't do that.
Well, do you know what NASA admitted to doing with all the videotapes of all the data from the moon landing?
Uh-huh.
They taped over them.
Yeah, they recorded over it.
And then somebody found them at a yard sale. Like episodes of freaking Donahue or something. Like, hey Jim, Springer's coming on today. What do we got? What do we got? I'm gonna miss it. What about Armstrong landing on the moon? Yeah, tape over. This is what happened.
Sally Jesse's coming on. Hurry up, get the tape.
Just think about this for a second. Pull yourself back and think about this as a rational human being. If you just did something that was greater than
that monumental
than what Columbus did,
archive,
than what Vikings did,
national archive material.
Moon, and your telemetry data was taped over and then eventually lost and found at a yard sale. What? This is us making stuff up. These are facts.
Yeah, these are facts
that you can find. They're out there. People openly admitted to them.
The moon landing was once again the same sort of thing, same sort of psychological operation that 9/11 was. It was this rally everybody together, rah, 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 America stuff.
Beat the Russians to it.
Exactly. It was beat the Russians. With 9/11, it's we got to fight them there so they don't get us here, man. Let's get them. And it's the same sort of
perpetual war.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Well, how about you, Simon? What conspiracy theory do you want to dive into? Because you talking about some of the big ones and the old ones, and I think 9/11 and NASA are some pretty big ones, and we really touched on Flat Earth a little bit. Well, that's a whole nother show in itself. But
an older one than that would be kind of the whole mythos around World War II.
Yeah, what about the what was the ship? What was it called?
USS Liberty?
No, not the Liberty.
That was bombed by Israel in the 60s.
Yeah, to try to get us into the...
What adventure, what film was done on this that just was too close?
Titanic, Gulf of Tonkin. No. There's a lot of conspiracy behind the Titanic, too. That actually wasn't
the whole warship went through time.
The warship went...
Oh, the Philadelphia experiment.
The Philadelphia experiment.
That's a
now,
great
there's
one.
a good one.
This is not one I've looked into a lot, so somebody help me out here.
I knew this was going to be a good one.
This is akin to Tesla stuff. This is really at the heart of what I do believe is probably possible once you understand how this world actually works and the real physics of it. Not the fake physics that we've been given by NASA and these other things, but the basic premise on that is that they're working on time travel, and they basically were able to make this ship with all of its passengers, this military ship, the Philadelphia, disappear for a period of time.
Yeah,
and now the question is whether it just actually disappeared or whether it actually jumped onto another timeline. Or, but the result of it is that everyone who was on the ship showed significant signs of illness after this experiment was done. Amnesia, all sorts of different sicknesses, all sorts of stuff. And if anybody's watched Stranger Things on the Netflix show, which I watched the first season of, and then I was like, this is ridiculous. They're going to take this in a bad direction. But it's akin to that sort of stuff, where there are these other dimensions, there are these other timelines right around us, that it's just a question of whether you know how to access these things or not, and that more than likely time travel is possible in some form. And yeah, that's.
I think with the digital age, that's either being grossly abused, or it's being exposed for what it is, and now it becomes a spoiler alert.
Well, time travel, I think, is possible only because we're probably not on a linear timeline. Like, our timeline circles around and it folds back on itself. So that's the way you're able to time travel, is because it's not linear. There's an end to it. It circles back around always. I mean,
I'm just too dumb to grasp that, but there we go.
But so a ship actually disappeared. How long was it disappeared for?
It wasn't for a super long period of time. I would have to look it up again to know exactly how long, but it was, they were working on like cloaking technologies and trying to, be able to, like, go kill people without them knowing they were there, I guess, is the basic premise. But it all stems off of kind of Tesla technology and manipulation of energy and matter and things like that around you.
They said that Tesla had a device back in his time, like he invented Wi-Fi long before we ever what it was, but he had like an earthquake device or something where he could pretty much bring down an entire building just through vibrations or whatever. They talk about vibrations. There's this guy, was it in Florida or Georgia, who has all these massive rock monuments in his backyard, and people have eyes on him all the time except for nighttime when they think he does it, and he uses vibrations potentially to like lift up these 1,000-pound boulders and stuff to make these creations. Like, there's nothing back there machine wise that's able to do it. You know what I mean? Like, some of these things are way beyond our.
Well, it's you mentioned it earlier. I don't know if we were recording yet, but HARP and weather control comes from Tesla stuff. And what HARP is, it's an array of antennas, radio antennas, and they're able to shoot radio frequencies up into the ionosphere, and it actually then bounces back down, and depending on the different frequencies and how much of it, they are able then to target specific depths in the earth that they will hit. So they are able to cause earthquakes with these things. They are able to manipulate weather with this. Like the Haiti earthquake from a decade or so ago is more than, in my opinion, was caused by HARP technology, especially because they specifically opened up a gigantic oil vein on the coast of Haiti that they were never able to get to before. That was one of the things that came about. And how is it?
Really?
And how is it that all these natural disasters seem to happen to Haiti, but not the Dominican Republic, which is the same tiny little landmass that Haiti is on? But yet nothing ever happens to the Dominican Republic. It's almost like they're able to target these things specifically to a certain area. And then if you look at all the weird weather events that we've had over the past 5 or 6 years, the different fires that have gone on out west, where you see these beams shooting down out of the sky, and then all of a sudden there's a 10,000 acre fire happening, or the fact that you have cars that are melting in the street, but yet the piece of wood, right, the tree is untouched right beside it, so the tree doesn't burn, but the car is melted.
What's causing that?
I believe some sort of like scalar wave kind of technology that they're able to use now, where it only affects metal and it doesn't affect things that are natural for the most part.
So now we're still coming back to that same old, who are that?
Well, I mean,
and it always comes back to that.
It's
because without that accusatory finger pointing to someone or an entity of substance.
Look, I think
then it becomes that the credibility of the accuser is always brought into question, because who are they?
Yeah, I mean, I could come back and give you a list of 100 or 200 or 300 names of people that you probably have only heard of a few of them that are at the top of this kind of cabal that is doing this. But I think that there's also thousands upon thousands of people that are involved, and they don't even know they're involved.
Oh, they're complying.
They're completely compartmentalized too.
Well, it's like the Manhattan Project. Nobody knew what they were working
exactly
on.
what they were working on.
20 different people working in 20 different departments, putting 20 different things together.
That's another conspiracy, is the fact that nukes aren't really real. Well, I mean, if you look at...
we're holding a paper tiger as a threat to global peace.
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
If you look at the bombs that were dropped on Japan at the end of the war, within 3 days in Nagasaki, the trains were running again. Now, if that was actually a nuclear bomb that was dropped, all of that infrastructure would have been fried out completely. There's no possible way. But yet...
Well, that was an atomic bomb, though, correct? But same kind of concept.
Same concept, right? Yeah. It involves all the different, components of nuclear, stuff and nuclear waste that would...
By the way, both of those cities look better than Detroit today.
Exactly. And there were people living and thriving.
That's not hard.
There were people living and thriving there within, months after that happened.
Well, allegedly in Japan, they reported that it was just another firebombing, like everything else.
Yeah, that's what I believe.
They said it was all firebombing. It was just a massive one, and it came in, and beyond that, there wasn't a lot of reporting in the United States on it either. Only one reporter in the entire country had access to be able to report on the atomic bombs being dropped, and that was a guy from the New York Times. He was the only one. Nobody else was allowed to report on it for like 3 months. And Tokyo just reported as normal fire bombings as always. So, and you think about Chernobyl, where they said 10,000 years after these meltdowns, you'll never be able to have life grow there again. Chernobyl is being covered in life.
Wildlife is thriving.
There's people that live there still.
Well, there's I've
Now, I'm not saying the place is completely safe. I'm saying there probably is some radioactive, but it's not. Destruction is a claim.
I've seen people taking swims in those pools that are all around there, and they get out and they're still alive today. And then we had the scientist that was going around here in the 80s and 90s and drinking plutonium for years and years and years, and demonstrating how it didn't kill you. It wasn't poison.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the guy's name, but I watched the video.
Yeah.
Simon was going to tell us how he's been to Chernobyl before. So
let me hear this.
No, this is actually secondhand, and I do know. I've got to be very careful about this. I do know an individual that went to Chernobyl, maybe 5 years ago, maybe less than that. And he was involved in some of the studies there. And I got to see some of the pictures and all that good stuff. Clearly something happened there that was catastrophic, and continues to be catastrophic. So I've seen it secondhand. So no, Billy, I'm not saying that I've seen it firsthand, but I can't give... Excuse me. It's very difficult to be able to quantify where I'm going with this, because it's on touchy ground.
You don't want to give away any
we'll leave it at that
assets or anything.
Yeah, so we know that certainly was a natural disaster.
No, I think it was
a nuclear incident.
Yes, I think it was, but I don't think the whole 10,000 years of no life thing, I think that's a lot of fear to keep us
absolutely.
in panic.
Absolutely.
I think the whole nuclear war, nuclear Armageddon is things to keep us in panic. We got to trust these guys. We got to throw them money because they're going to save us from the Soviets nuking us to death. You know what I mean? It's just...
I do believe there are nukes. I mean...
there are terrible freaking bombs.
I believe there were nukes set off on 9/11. I believe that's why you see the dustification, as Judy Wood called it, of the towers. I don't believe it was high or... an energy weapon. I believe it was some sort of tactical nuke that was set off in both of those buildings, and that's why they just turned to dust.
Well, someone's got... dear Lord. Yeah, that's a scary thought.
And I lived in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 5 years, and that is an area... I lived 25 minutes from Los Alamos. And
no, we're going to come on to Area 51. You know it.
That's where one of the questions I asked on the Facebook today. I said, Area 51, is that something,
Yeah. And life is thriving all throughout the deserts there in New Mexico, and I mean, there's nuclear waste and different
They've done
experiments that have
multiple.
gone on and are buried all over the place
Yeah,
there.
they've done
So,
multiple cleanups of that area and adjacent areas. They've done multiple cleanups in the Australian desert too. Now they've paid a lot of the Aboriginal tribes
yeah,
money for some of the not just tribal lands waste, but human damage that they have done. I think if you look at Bikini Atoll, there's some issues there that certainly need uncovering. My father was on, I still don't know how many nuclear tests he witnessed, but he was on Christmas Island back in '58. So, these experiments on mankind have happened,
oh yeah,
and I am directly, you know,
Oh, they've tested the limits of their
well,
capabilities for sure.
my father died when I was 5 years old
okay,
because he was on Christmas
Christmas
Island.
Island, yeah.
So, don't tell me that the atomic weapons establishment in Aldermaston, Berkshire, wasn't culpable in my father's death.
Oh, I'm sure it
You're
was.
damn straight they were.
Oh,
Her Majesty's government were. Her Majesty's scientists were.
Well, we know they experiment. I mean, look at MK Ultra. They were dosing whole towns and cities with
Oh, yeah.
LSD in the late 50s and early 60s.
So these conspiracy theories now really are conspiracy fact. These are all spoiler alerts.
and who was
Yeah.
connected to MK Ultra? Well, we know Manson,
Yeah,
Charles
Manson
Manson.
was.
They tried numerous times to lock him up, and somebody would come and show up at the sheriff's department and say, "No, let him go."
Yeah, they got him
Let him
out
go.
every time.
Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah.
Ted Kaczynski, if you look into the life of him, the Unabomber, if anybody doesn't know, like for one, he was a genius. Number two, he predicted everything that's going on right now today. Number three, he was part of MK Ultra, and part of also him as a baby, he was left. And this is why it always goes back to me for family and love and care and compassion to the degree that you can. But when it comes to your own children, your own family, love as much as you can. Ted Kaczynski was sat and left alone for months on end as a infant without any human contact. Like they would not touch him. They would not pick him up. He might have had some rare disease or something like that, but I think part of it might have also been just the whole deal.
Crappy parents, yeah.
But no, like he was in like an incubator hospital, and nobody for months did not touch him. He had no human contact, and look what.
Yeah, that'll mess you up. Well, I mean, but he was experimented on.
Plus
He was
MK
experimented
Ultra,
on.
and he was a genius. Like they had the perfect cocktail. They found somebody that was
Well, that and like there's a researcher out there named Recluse, and I believe he's right with this. The whole gifted program that has been going on in this country for 50 years or so, I believe was just an identification program to find certain personality types of a certain intellect to recruit into these different programs and to use them in different ways. Because if you look at a lot of the people that have turned out to be either vilified as these really horrible people or have been then put into positions of prominence where they became, whatever, this or that, they all came out of the gifted program.
yeah.
So
bloody smoke.
well, and that's why they do the standardized testing. The standardized testing is just to simply identify certain personality types and then to
mold them.
mold them into what they want them to be.
Yeah, if you think for a second, if you look out there in today's culture, there are football and college baseball programs out there that are going out here and offering eighth graders athletic scholarships. You don't know, and these kids are accepting, I guess maybe not officially, but unofficially accepting. If you think for a minute that for 4 years, either that kid's going to keep his commitment or any of this is going to happen, you're completely out of your minds. But what are they doing? They are recruiting at that young age. If you don't think that the government is not going in there and recruiting and finding these kids in different ways, you're out of your freaking mind. Sports teams are doing it. Why wouldn't the government do it? The government is the biggest corporation in this country. It's the biggest business in this country. And if you think the Major League Baseball and NFL, who are fraction of what the government is aren't out there recruiting, then you're out of your mind. They're out there finding these kids, and for different things. You know,
Yeah.
some of them are to carry out terrible things to push a narrative. I mean, look, Governor Whitmer in Michigan had that whole kidnapping plot going against her, and out of the 14 or 15 people involved, I think all but 2 of them were feds.
No, it was 23 involved, 14 of them were feds.
That's entrapment.
And the 9 that are involved were all like below 100 IQ.
Yeah, and the FBI field office head who oversaw that operation right after that happened, then was transferred and was the head of the DC field office for January 6th.
How convenient.
Yes. So
I mean, it's mind-boggling.
These have all been Fed-run operations, just like I believe a lot of the mass shootings have been Fed-run operations.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Oklahoma City was a Fed-run operation.
Think back, and this might trigger some people, and if it does, then maybe you're not ready for all this kind of stuff. But why was Alex Jones hammered so hard for the Sandy Hook thing? I mean,
because he was right.
I mean, look, kids being killed is a terrible, horrible thing, no matter which way you look at it. But I mean, I looked really deep into the Sandy Hook thing because of Alex Jones. I looked really deep into it because of all these things, and a lot of things, if you're looking at the aerial footage and of things going on, none of it makes any sense at all. Like the father who's sitting there laughing off of camera right before he goes on camera and gets really somber. I'm sitting there thinking, as me as a father, if that happened to my child, I wouldn't be out there at a press conference. I wouldn't be able to see public. I wouldn't be able to look at anybody, much less be laughing and carry on right before they say camera's on and your whole face and complexion changes. Yep. Like there's aerial shots and stuff. There's no ambulances in sight. Like in Virginia Tech, there's ambulances everywhere. Up there, they were like 4 or 5 blocks away. There's not this. I mean, it's
no ambulances, absurd. no medevac choppers. They were ordering porta potties instead. There were signs up that said everyone must check in. If you watch the footage from the fire station that's right there, it's the same people walking in and out and around in a circle of the fire station over and over and over again. I'm not even sure Adam Lanza actually existed, the guy who supposedly did the shooting. And the way that what I say to people when I talk about this is my position is that no kids died that day. Would you be happy if I was right?
Yeah.
That no children died that day? I mean that's instead you're rooting for the fact that kids died.
Yeah, that's a defining angle because I still cannot reconcile that level of
depravity.
It's depravity.
Well, what about the Vegas shooting? Like, if you want to think about Sandy Hook and it involves kids and that really tears at the heartstrings, but if you think those things can't happen, then you look at Vegas and you're like, okay, 140 some people dead. One guy in Vegas in a city with cameras everywhere, like cameras that are so stingent that they can pick you out of a crowd picking cards at a blackjack table. And you're going to tell me this guy got all these weapons up to his room, knocked out the window, and it took security of a place with millions of dollars that are probably former special forces guys, really, who are ahead of it. It took them 10 minutes to get up there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you're going to tell me all that fire, he had all those people down there. You know what I mean? Like, and now the FBI, to this day, there's no motive for it. They have no information released out on this kind. I mean, just
he was a gun runner for the feds. His brother was a convicted pedophile. That whole story stinks to high hell. My guess is that somebody like John Cullen is right that those shootings occurred from helicopters that were flying around that night.
Well, a lot of people said that.
There are all sorts of weird stuff.
Well, you can see the flashes coming from some of the helicopters in the videos if they're accurate.
The Sandy Hook thing, and then you look at the more recent Nashville shooting. There's an interesting connection there, and the connection is Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Melissa Joan Hart. Now, she was an actress who was Sabrina the Teenage Witch,
and Clarissa explains it all.
That's right. And supposedly she lived right beside Newtown, Connecticut, and was so strongly affected by the Sandy Hook shooting. And now they've rolled her out again with this Nashville shooting. Supposedly, she was just on her way to her kid's school, which is right around the corner from the school that was shot up. And she got out of her car and helped these 5 children across the street with this teacher that was crying. And it's just this emotional story that she gives. Now, what are the chances that an actress is involved in two major school shooting events like that. What are the chances? I mean, and I don't believe in coincidences. There's something fishy going on about that. And like another thing, and people pointed this out with this Nashville shooting event immediately. So you've got the person, he, she, whatever it was, that shoots the door and comes in the building, right? And they're clearly wearing Puma shoes. I mean, it's the old school black suede.
I don't
Pumas.
I don't know much about this shooting, but this is the only thing I've heard.
2 days later, they released the police body cam footage. You watch the footage; they're coming in. First of all, they go through the school. There's not a single person in this school. You don't see anybody shot. You don't see anybody anywhere. They're just clearing empty rooms. Well, at the end of it, after they shoot the supposed shooter dead, they come up to her or him or whatever, and the body cam footage clearly shows that they're wearing these like flame-colored Vans shoes. So you're telling me that a person who goes in to shoot up a school changes their shoes halfway through they're doing this? It makes no sense. These things don't add up. And with every one of these events, the Boston bombing, Oklahoma City, Sandy Hook, the Nashville shooting,
Parkland down in Florida,
all of them. It's the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. The Pulse nightclub shooting. There's a hospital like 4 blocks down the road. There's videos of people supposedly carrying shooting victims out, and they're carrying them the wrong way. They're carrying them away from the hospital. There's something wrong with every one of these events.
Well, the crazy and worst part about it all was I think Virginia Tech might have been the one legitimate one that actually did just be just happened to be the perfect storm of just a lunatic.
What do you think about
because Tara was there that day? I was there that day.
What do you think about the Channel 7 shooting at the lake? Have you seen the videos of that, of the guy supposedly with the different shirt on and the...
No, include us in it because and the reason I know people at that station that did know her and she was killed, but I've heard a couple of people talk about conspiracies with it, but I haven't really dove deep into it.
Yeah, the video footage doesn't add up. I mean, it doesn't come anywhere.
So where are we going with all of this? What's
media?
I need a solution.
Media manipulation, like pushing narratives through like shootings and mass shootings and stuff. And we also got to sit back and think that it also gets reported that ultimately most of these people were reported. Like the guy, Sandman or whatever down in Florida, was reported multiple times that he said he was going to do this kind of thing and they completely ignored it. Yeah. What about Uvalde? How many cops sit there and let that thing... Allegedly, a man had his wife as a teacher in there and didn't go in there and do anything. I mean, are we supposed to believe that?
Yeah, but yet it was an off-duty Border Patrol agent who was getting a haircut nearby that stormed in and saved the day somehow. These things,
There's cops in there while the shooter is down the hall. Yeah. And they're on their phones with his Punisher logo in the background, which is pretty ironic. Yeah. They're sitting there getting hand sanitizer and stuff with their weapons. And there's literally just down the hall 30 feet is the what is going on here? What is going on?
Something's not right.
What is going on?
I'm not claiming to know.
And we don't, and Simon, to your thing, what do we do about it? We don't, we're trying to ask these questions so more and more people ask these questions, and hopefully people start holding these people accountable because none of this makes sense. I mean, if that was your wife in there, if that was not even your wife, if you're just somebody with a gun and you know somebody is in there murdering innocent children, anybody with a shred of decency is going to run in there and do what they got to do. If not multiple people, and it's not even got to be your children. So you're going to tell me people who are paid to do this, people who are supposed to be brave, people with the proper training, people with bulletproof vests and stuff aren't going to go in there and they're not going to face a shooter when what they were doing on the outside was holding parents back. Yeah, parents were trying to jump the fence and they were arresting
handcuffed parents.
What the flip are we talking about here? What are we doing? What is going on?
What are you keeping them from?
What is going on?
And to all of that, I still, and it's not my cynicism at all. What's the end game? Because I'm still.
Well, I think the shooting.
I'm really struggling to grasp that.
The shootings are about gun control and the Second Amendment, and it's also about this. It's what is
scare
it?
you.
It's trauma-based
Yeah,
mind control.
trauma-based mind control.
Trauma-based mind control. You just keep hitting the population with these horrifying events, and when you get into that mindset of being scared and fearful like that, you can't make rational decisions. That's why they get away with these events that seem so sloppy if you actually look at them, and why people just buy the narrative, because
Well, the crisis actors too.
emotionally they're so emotional about it that they can't
So
reason through what's going on.
what's the end effect on society by doing this?
It's as simple as this, and it all boils down to this. I mean, everything out there, every conspiracy we've talked about, at the end of the day, there's a correlation, and that correlation is simply good versus evil. At the end of the day, there are evil forces that are trying to just destroy the world, like what's his name said, and like Alfred said, and in The Dark Knight, he said some people just want to watch the world burn, and I think that there are people out there that are. This goes deep into religion, and these people are just satanic. These people have all the luxuries that this earthly life could possibly be given to them, and they don't want to let go of them because they are so consumed by their wealth, by their power, by everything, that they want to hold on to it as long as possible. And by doing that, they also, they're keeping their boot on the rest of the population of the world, because now they think that they have this divine power to where they control things, and it's all satanic. And at the end of the day, it boils down to a fight between good versus evil. That's it. It's good versus evil.
That to me appears to be the only plausible rationale that I can apply to it, and that scares the living shit out of me, because if we're talking about good and evil, we're talking about Satan. Is that not now putting us in the sphere of being the religious zealots, that we've all been told to fear? Well,
because they want to demonize religion, because at the end of the day, religion is actually peaceful. It's you follow those 10 simple steps, you be good to your neighbor, you take care of people, you get this family wholesome lifestyle. And if you have this family and you portray that to your neighbor, and your neighbor portrays that to your neighbor, well, then you don't need these evil people being that middleman connecting you to everything that you need. So essentially, at the end of the day, they're trying to keep us down so they can have control over you, but you can't kill a spirit. And that's ultimately where we find ourselves, is we are the spirit, the Holy Trinity, whatever you want to call it, and everything else in the world. I mean, they say these things in church when you're a kid, and you roll your eyes and you pass, and you're not thinking about it. But at the end of the day, it makes complete and total. There are people out there, watch their videos, they're scientific atheists, people that sit there and said, how I became to believe in God was I set out to disprove him. This one guy said, the reason I believe in Jesus is because you go to every single religion, and every single religion, what do? They acknowledge Jesus. You go to, Hinduism, they say, well, Jesus had this way, but this is our way. You go to Islam, well, Jesus had this way. Every single one of them, he said, gave credit to Jesus, and Jesus only gave credit to himself. He said, that's how I knew. Every other religion out there gave credit to Jesus, but only Jesus gave credit to himself. So that's how I figured out he was the way. There's other people out there that will talk about going to the end of the earth to try and disprove it. And the more and more they tried, the more and more they got into it and found out that there is no way to disprove it. Anybody that's hold on, look, religion and belief is two different things. Like, I know a lot of people will look at the Joel Osteens of the world and the Billy Grahams and the Falwells. They're false prophets. You know what I mean? There are people that are out here, they are taking money from people and trying to lead them down a certain. I get why people dislike them, but that's not God. God is in your community. God is in this room right now between three people that are communicating and talking, sharing their ideas, taking them back to our families, and building and strengthening our communities. That's what God is. You know what I mean? That's what we have here. That's what we're fighting for. And that's really what the good in this world is.
Good and evil.
Well said.
That's actually quite a shattering experience for me to get it down to that black and white. Good and evil.
It's that simple.
And when you put it in those terms, wow, am I now going to become a libertarian religious zealot? I don't know, because that's really what you're asking. That's really the conclusion, is that I now need to be a libertarian religious zealot.
I don't think it's zealousy, though.
well,
We've been told that it's zealousy.
right.
That by people that have lied to us, in my opinion, about anything significant in this world. They have lied about.
Because they want you to root for their team. Well, my team could fix this or my team could do that. If you're on a team fighting with each other, well, that other person believes in that team. Look, if you pulled ourselves back and found out at the end of the day, 90% of the population all agrees with each other
Yeah.
on 90% of the things. We really do.
Yeah.
But they find every single possible dividing variable they can use, whether it be black or white or gay or straight or Christian or Muslim or man versus woman or, no matter what it is, south versus north, east versus west, they find anything they possibly can to divide you, because at the end of the day, it's something as simple as community and fellowship. That's what church is all about. That's what religion all about. It's about fellowship. We're doing fellowship right now. It doesn't have to be on Sunday.
That's right.
It doesn't have to be on Saturday. It doesn't have to be a specific day of the week. Those times are great. I think it's awesome that people go and on Sunday mornings they all congregate, they get together, then they go eat lunch afterwards and they talk and they get around people. They're not trapped in their basements arguing with people online all day long, never seeing sunshine. Just that simple fellowship. And you can do that every single day of the week, and you're still doing that fellowship in the eyes of God. You don't have, the whole religious, not people use religion, that's blasphemous. They're using religion to siphon money from people. Those people got a special place in hell. But the simplicity of it at the end of the day is just community. It's being around your people. That's it. That's it. It's us right here. This is fellowship. This is fellowship.
Yeah, but the good and evil thing is the simplest explanation to what's going on. And I think you need to pick your side, and you need to do it now.
Yeah. And I mean, the side of good is simple, is leave children alone, leave people alone, and stop exerting your force on others.
Well, I've always said, and I've said this ever since I've been on the show. I've said it for a long time. It's all about the Big Ten. You know, you follow the Big Ten, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if you're not religious. Like people who call themselves atheists find themselves still like submitting to like Christian values and moral codes, because it has. Do you know why the Bible was taken off the New York Times bestseller list? Because it was a bestseller every single year. They had to finally take it off because it was number one. Like, what document lasts that long? And we're still talking about something that has been chopped up. They're hiding pieces of the Bible we haven't even seen yet, like the Lost Scrolls. You can read the Book of Enoch and things like that. Like, a lot of these things that they're hiding from us still that we know that are there are probably telling us, like, pinpointing exactly what's going on right now. And that's why they're not showing them to us, because they don't want you to know with what accuracy that these people 2,000 years ago predicted to what is going on today. I know we're getting ready to come to a conclusion here because we've been going on for a while, but I mean, that brings up a whole another conspiracy in itself about, these people trying to bring on tribulation. They tried to bring on the end of times. Some of these things, some of these moves about, moving these places around in Jerusalem and things like that. Like, they're talking about, these people are trying to test fate. They're trying to test God, with their.
Well, yeah, they're trying to fulfill prophecy. I mean, that was the whole,
to bring on the end times.
Construction of Israel in 1947 with the Balfour Declaration is that we're going to force on biblical prophecy here and make it happen. And then that's one of the things that Trump did, is trying to, move the
capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
That's right.
Yep.
Or at least move the embassy.
And then you've got the Temple Mount location where there have been a lot of threats on blowing that up so they can rebuild that temple there, because I believe right now there's a mosque there or something.
There is a mosque.
And so you've got all those things going on. There. Have you?
Yeah.
So you've got all those.
But he's on our side now, though. So.
You got all those things going on, and people just don't understand them. But if you can even take a lot of the kind of biblical stuff out. Just live by natural law. Do unto others as you would like done unto you.
The golden rule.
And if you just kind of live that ethos, this world would be a million times better place to be.
We've come pretty darn close to going full circle, and the good and evil is the simplest way of putting it. And at the moment, we're losing that fight.
Well, no, we're not.
I don't think we are.
We're not.
It appears we are.
They want you to think that we are.
Just like they want you to think that you're in the minority.
What do you start doing when you corner a wounded animal, what does that animal start doing? It starts firing back and leashing out with everything it possibly can. And if you'll notice right now, the bad people in this country, bad people in this world, they are slinging everything they have against
That's
the
right.
wall. They are talking
Just hoping it
because
sticks.
they are watching Target to get destroyed. They are watching Bud Light get destroyed. They are watching all these media companies, Vice News, the Daily Beast, or whatever. All these big left wing news outlets, they are all crashing. They're going bankrupt. Their whole narrative is crumbling right in front of them, and they are trying to take all the fine china off the Titanic before it sinks. Is basically what's going on.
They're
right now.
declaring parents terrorists because they're
good luck with
showing
that.
up at school board meetings.
This is this is what happens at the end. They know their time is.
I believe so. Yeah.
I pray to God that is the case. I really do.
And what we're doing right here is part of that. You know what I mean? Like what we do on this show, we come on here and, you know, we have national draw, but we also try and keep it as local as we possibly can to inspire people around here to understand, look, we're fighting. And you should fight too. I mean, even if it's just something as simple as pay attention. You know, we spent the past couple hours on here talking about conspiracy theories and all these things for the most part. I mean, we've talked about a couple things about Antarctica and stuff, and those things right there they're really fun to think about, and they very well could be true, but we haven't proven them yet to our eyes. But there are so many things we talked about today that can be verified through your eyes and ears. Yeah. It's very simple. All you have to do is do the research and just understand that these people are lying to you, and it goes from the top all the way down to your local governments. They're lying to you. They're in cahoots with other people who are in cahoots with other people, and it's a giant
who are in cahoots with the devil.
Exactly.
That's right.
Good versus evil. And a lot of them don't even know it.
That's the end game.
A lot of them don't even know it. They don't even know it, but it is. But good will always win. And I believe we're on the righteous path right now. Like I said, I believe we are winning. They don't want you to make you think we are, but you can see the tide is turning. The only thing I fear most is, like I said earlier, is that Trump is going to come in here or somebody like him, and the pendulum is going to swing so
too
far hard back that he is going to become the Hitler-like figure, not to the concentration camp, and that's a whole nother, but just to the locking everybody up, and it's going to look really bad on him, although it's probably justified, but they're still going to have that narrative, and they're still going to be able, you know what I mean? Like, hey, let's not forget Prescott Bush, Times Magazine, all these people supported Hitler back in the day. Coca-Cola, Henry Ford,
was Man of the Year.
Man of the Year, 1933. I mean, let's not forget
about all these
things. He graced
the cover
things.
Twice.
Yes, let's not forget about all these things. Like,
yeah, I think I said on the Spike Cohen show, Hitler in 1933 looked pretty damn good on paper.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Germans loved him. Because I look at
and how happened. Shocking is that?
Yeah, well,
right. The most industrial nation on the planet got behind that lunatic.
Yeah, and I mean, what made him be a lunatic? I mean, could he have been reasonable?
Well, I'm not even going to go down that
nobody
road.
even knows. But like, same thing with Trump. What if he comes in and goes scorched earth and starts locking up people, and then they compare it to the Gulag?
All of
I mean, it's just perception.
All of the same families that are running us today were the ones funding Hitler.
Oh, very much so. I mean, and the Swiss banks did exactly both sides. But I still cherish the memory and various speeches from Winston Churchill. Sorry, Billy. But he insisted on calling him Corporal Hitler, which constantly amuses me. Just bringing a touch of humour to it because it's a very dark period in history that, our grandparents went through. And we should not be going through this. We know evil when we see it. And wake up, folks, because evil is amongst us.
Well, but and we're going to get off here, but maybe as a teaser for our next show, because that when you talk about that as well, I mean, I know old me, Mr. Mustache had quite the track record and stuff, but when compared to Stalin and Mao Zedong in China, he doesn't even hold a candle to him, but we don't hold those people in the same regard, which is kind of mind-boggling itself too.
Pol Pot, the Khmer Rouge.
Exactly. Why?
Oh, dear Lord.
Why aren't people like that held to the same? You know what I mean? It's weird that why is the World War II stuff always pushed on us, but the rest of it in it? Well, because for one, we sent soldiers there, but two, it's because it helps continue to push this narrative.
It's the perfect narrative.
Exactly. So I think that's a phenomenal place to start.
Our fight is against evil, and it's that simple.
Yeah, and you can start, and I'm not saying we got evil people here locally, but start local. You know what I mean? Just start reaching out to we've preached this on this show for 2 years now. Start local, reach out to your neighbors, talk to your neighbors, create a network. Stay local. Franklin County is a great place to start for people listening around here, but go out and find your own place. Find people. If you're living in the city, go within 10 blocks, find internet, something, put out flyers, say, hey, do y'all want to get up and get a community garden going? Do you want to do this? I'll grow this, y'all grow that, and that way in the wintertime we can all trade it up. Find away. Maybe you have to drive out to the country once a month, you and 4 of your buddies or whatever live in the neighborhood, and you go and you bring back a truckload of food to support your people that's not going to have GMOs in it, it's not going to have poisons in it or steroids and things. Like, you can do simple things.
I mean, they're shooting up the meat now with mRNA
that's
technology.
that's all. I mean, what absolute nonsense. But on all of those initiatives, which I think we're promoting very well here, in Franklin County, and we're going to continue to do so, is live by the Big Ten, folks. I mean, if you live by the Big Ten, I think you're going to be in a good place.
I think so too.
It's going to get down to that.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well,
that was profound.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts?
Just, I know it's a lot of crazy information we talked about tonight, and we hit on a bunch of different subjects, and if you're interested in any of them, just kind of, hop online and don't read the first Google search that comes up for any of it, because
we don't even use Google. Maybe Brave.
Use something else, or go on to Rumble, Rumble, because
or go to BitChute.
BitChute is a great place for a lot of the kind of more out there conspiracy stuff, but
YouTube censors a lot of simple stuff its own.
Yeah, just know that don't look at it as a negative thing. Realize that, knowledge is power, and understanding that these things have been done to us gives you a leg up as far as understanding what we have to do to stick together and to survive and to prosper once we get through this turbulent time.
And be able to get over yourself, because it is easier to fool a man than it is to convince somebody that they have been fooled. And people out there, I'm with you. They got me with Iraq. And
it allows you then, once this kind of period is over, for this to hopefully never happen again. Because if you understand that you've been lied to about all these things, and you understand the tricks that were employed to do it, then hopefully later on you're able to teach your kids, and they teach their kids, that, hey, this is how the devil works. This is how they're going to do this.
Critical thinking.
Yeah.
What a concept.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been a blast.
Hey, this has been a blast. I mean, what a conversation. Good Lord.
I've had a lot of fun with it. We actually ended up making it to the time that I suggested that we do it.
I know you would.
Well, I didn't anticipate doing it, but I know how Simon gets. So thank everybody for tuning in once again. Patreon.com/GetOnTap. You can go there and support us for only $3 a month. We're getting ready to start coming out. I know I keep saying this every week, but now that we've got our house in order, things are getting wrapped back around here. We're done with vacation. My wife's done working for the summer. Then we're going to start getting some Patreon episodes back out there, because I know that's the cool side of it. Who knows? I mean, something as simple as that, we can call up Stu and maybe do 30 minutes on the latest conspiracy every now and then or something, just a quick Zoom call. But Patreon.GetOnTap. Patreon.com/GetOnTap is where you can go for only $3 a month. You're supporting local. We're taking the money that you do give us, and we are putting it right back into this community. I take it and I go buy meat from Chris. I go buy meat and produce from Gail. I buy Simon some liquor every now and then.
Damn, I wish. Yeah, and again, some of these shows do have a cost element to them. Bringing in Spike Cohen, even though we had a huge amount of sponsors helping us with that, we require sort of that financial support, and it. God, I find that the subjects of money vulgar. I really do, but we're looking to really make the community better and prosper, and any little bit helps.
Yeah, because more of these events are going to take place, and they're going to get bigger. We'll bring more liberty-minded people to this area, and to have these conversations with people. To get out here and have.
We need to be thought-provoking.
Exactly, to talk to different people. Have these events. Get out here and find out what your community's doing, what your people are doing, and so all that helps. Cash App is Get On Tap. Venmo is at Get On Tap, and PayPal is WB Riddle. Even if it's just a one-time donation, but every little bit does really help. And like Simon said, none of that event with Spike was cheap. We had a ton of sponsors, and thank every one of them for all their support and help. But we want to be able to give back more. We want to be able to have bigger names. We want to be able to have bigger events, and we want to be able to pay the bills around here.
We want to swing the balance.
The equipment, the mics. I'm constantly having to replace them. Things like just little things like this will all make this base. And from me to Simon, to everybody else out there that supports us, you're helping all them as well, because we're putting all this right back to them. We're promoting you guys. We're promoting local, and we're also promoting good ideas if they're not local. We got friends in other parts of Appalachia. We promote their businesses because we care about them, and we care about putting a product out there, supported by people that don't hate you. So it doesn't really matter. All that matters at the end of the day is we take care of each other.
That's right.
Roger that.
So for Simon, Stuart, everybody out there, we'll catch you next time.